Okay, perfect. Thank you all for joining for the Grad Student Financial Wellness Workshop. Today we have Sean Christopher. I'm going to go ahead and just hand it over to him. He can give you a brief introduction of himself and then get started for today.
Thank you. My name is Sean. I am a graduate assistant, so I'm a grad student like all of you here. I'm with the Institute for Financial Literacy and Wellness here on UNLV. And today we were going to be discussing some topics regarding grad student financial wellness. Again, earlier I mentioned opening the Slido app. I also want to mention we have a couple people monitoring this. And so if you have any questions throughout, just go ahead and type them in the chat. The people who are moderating will jump in, read them out, and then we'll take it from there. So just raise your hand or type it in chat and we'll go from there. Couple things before we get started. So I do have a little bit more information on who's with me today and backgrounds of all of you. If you could go ahead and answer the questions. Tell me, are you full-time, part-time? If you're a graduate assistant like me, if you're work full-time, another job, if you work part-time somewhere, just trying to get an idea of who, you know, you know, what the background is of everybody who's here. So it seems most are full-time. Well, it's changing. So good chunk, a good portion of you work full-time, which is good. And then you're also full-time grad students. So if you're working full-time and a full-time grad student, I imagine you have your plate full. Some grad students, some grad assistants, other part-timers. Okay, I'm just trying to get an idea of, the finances that might be uh, affecting all of you. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about a few different things. First one is what's your dream? What's your financial dream? If you think back a few years, you had a dream or a goal that led you to go to grad school. And now that you're in grad school or you're getting ready to finish grad school, what's the next step? What do you want to accomplish? Uh, your finances will affect whatever that dream is going to be. So that's what we're going to discuss that. Then we're going to move on, quickly go over some of these other topics dealing with financial literacy, cover budgeting, strategies to help you save. Uh, an important rule, and this is going to be the theme of the day, so I'll just mention it now. Pay yourself first. I cannot, stress the importance of that. Pay yourself first. Your old self will thank you. Then we're going to discuss, quickly touch on the cost of credit, and then wrap it up with you just coming up with a strategy so you revisit your dream every year. Again, the big idea. What's your dream? What's your goal? You're going to transition from a student, where you're just getting by. Most of you are likely just getting by, not necessarily in survival mode, but you don't have a lot of extras for travel, for splurging, for buying a new car, for whatever it is. But you're going to transition from this student mentality to a working professional. So your shift on how you process thinking about money and your behavior dealing with money is going to change. So we're going to cover that shift. Also, what are your dreams? You mentioned what motivated you to go to grad school. That's also going to shift of what motivates you moving forward. With that in mind, starting today, I'd like you to identify and type in a 5-year goal. What's your 5-year dream? It could be travel. It could be, I want to buy a house. It could be, I want to buy a particular car or whatever it is. What's that 5-year dream? Again, just general. We don't need specifics. So just take a minute and enter it, please. Buy a house, manage at a firm, home ownership, PhD. So you want to go on to more school, find a great place to work, travel more. That would be mine. So buying a house seems to be a winner. Seems to be the goal of most of you have was the most common response. Well, that's going to take money, and that's a whole different workshop that we'll do at some point about buying a house. But you're going to need down payment. Probably recommend at least 20% down. So whatever you think that house is going to cost, you're going to want 20% of that. So $500,000 house, you're going to need $100,000. So how do you do that? One of the things we strive here to when we talk about budgeting is following what's called the 50/30/20 rule. 50% of your income goes to your needs, 30% goes to wants, and 20%, and this is the important 20%, goes to your financial freedom, which is paying off your debt. And more important, and also important with that is savings. Saving money aside, create an emergency fund. And once you have that emergency fund, put that money to work for you, invest it somewhere. And we're not really going to go off the deep end and start talking too much about investing here, but focus on that 20%. It's important. It's more important than you know when you're starting out. Down the road, 30 years down the road, facing retirement, I wish I was a little closer, paid a little more closer attention to that goal, saving more when I was young, because compounding takes over and a little bit put away grows into a larger amount down the road. Uh, some of you may have done some budgeting or use a tool for budgeting, but often you don't. You just kind of, you know what your money is coming in, you know what you spend, and you just go through with it. We have a tool, if you follow that QR code that's on the screen, and this will help you track your expenses, track your income, and then prepare a monthly budget for you. And once you enter this money or enter these entries for income and expenses, the rest of it just populates by itself. So it'll take care of your budgeting for you. Uh, Download this if you're interested. Follow the QR code. I mention it now because one of the things I'm going to ask you to do at the end for a follow-up action moving forward is to download the budget and a couple other things. So if you could take a moment, hit that QR code, it would be helpful. Maybe a couple minutes. And also when you're doing budgeting, it's helpful to break down what is your expenses? What are your needs? How much goes to your groceries, which you differentiate that from going out to eat, which is more of a want. It's a discretionary item. But also then we cover housing, transportation, tuition, all of it. So if you had never done this, I strongly urge you to take a few moments, a little bit of time on a weekend when you've got some free time, and go ahead and prepare your budget. I've mentioned to you the 20% rule for savings. As you're a grad student or you're a young working professional or you're just getting out of the workforce, saving 20% is not a real reality. You don't have the ability to do it. The income just isn't there yet. But it's important to get in the habit of savings, even if it's a little bit. 20% is the goal, but if you can't do it, put anything away, even if it's 5%. 10%. You're still going to have debts to pay, especially most of us are going to have student loans. But, getting out of school, you're going to have loans most likely. So that's going to be a big expense. But even with that expense, don't forget savings. Put something aside. But savings also isn't just money in an account. It's also part of your retirement planning. And we're going to touch on that in a second. And over time, as you advance in your profession, start making more money, pay off your debt and have a little bit more discretionary, you can then step up from 5% to 10% to 20%, and then take that 20% and move forward and follow that religiously. I mentioned retirement accounts. As students, often you don't have to worry about this type of question. A number of you are full-time employees, so you probably have dealt with some of this setting up these accounts. But the three basic types of accounts are the 401k, traditional IRA, and a Roth IRA. The 401k you get through your employer. So you've got to have a job, it's a career. You take money directly out of your paycheck before taxes come out. The key thing to remember about a 401k is most employers will match to a certain level. So if you're making $50,000 a year and your employer is going to match, say, 3% of that, and you put 3% of your income before taxes into your 401k, your employer is also going to put 3% in. So that's a free $1,500 per year. It doesn't matter, may not seem like a lot today, but 30 years now from down the road, with compounding, that $1,500 extra is going to grow exponentially. And it's not just this employer is going to do it. Every employer you move with throughout your careers should have a 401k plan, unless you go with a real small firm or you open your own business, but which is a whole different animal. But most employers are going to have the 401ks. And so you could take the one 401k and just roll it over into and have it follow you through life. Next is also there's traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs, and they're similar in a lot of ways, meaning you open them on your own. Um, you can use before tax money in a traditional Roth, or you can use after tax money, like you take it out once your payroll has dispersed money to you into your checking account. You then take the money from your checking account and put it into a Roth. The advantage of the Roth is all of the income and interest that goes off that money during your lifetime is all tax-free down the road. Huge benefit. So if you put $10,000 in and it grows to $100,000 by the time you hit retirement, all of that $100,000 is going to be tax-free to you. So there's no capital gains. Huge benefit versus, when you compare it to a traditional IRA or your 401k, the money you put in now when you go to retire or retire and you take it out down the road, as you take it out, you'll have to pay income on that gain. So look to the Roth IRAs. Once you've maxed out your 401k, talk to a financial professional and consider going with a Roth IRA as well. With also this, keep this in mind, there are penalties for taking this money out before you hit retirement age. You could start taking it out at age 59 and a half without a penalty. Prior to that, you're going to have to pay some type of penalty on that. So we've discussed savings briefly. We've discussed budgeting briefly. Now I'm going to ask you, if you had an extra $100 a month, where should that money go to for you in your dream? Take a couple minutes. Tell me what you think you do, what you think you should do with that $100. Someone says high yield savings account, pay bad debt first, investments, Roth investments. So most are saying either they're paying off student loans and debts, which is, again, all of these are good items. That's all good use things you should do. Someone else is still typing. So generally, it looks like all of you either want to put the money in a high yield savings account, some other type of investment vehicle, or pay off debts, including student loans. Now be honest. A little bit of reflection here. If you could try to be honest, what would you likely spend it on if you had $100 a month? Likely, it's beer. That's eating out, dining. Yeah. So reality takes over. We all know we should be saving, we should be investing, we should be paying off debt. But in reality, every time you get a little bit extra, you're going to spend it on something else, something discretionary. Well, gas isn't discretionary, but you're going to spend it on a want, something human nature. You're not going to have the discipline, and that's normal, uh, which is why saving is a habit. Once you start doing it, you fall on a habit of everything. You wake up, you check your phone. Every time you get a paycheck, you put a little money towards savings. It just becomes a habit. So, the reality of the situation, as you've just shown me, is different than what you should do. And that's human nature. I'm guilty of it as well. This, coming back to the point I mentioned to you earlier, uh, a different golden rule. We all know, the golden rule we were taught as kids, do unto others as you have them do unto you. This is a lot more selfish. Uh, Pay yourself first. Don't necessarily worry about others. Treat savings as non-negotiable. You've got to build that emergency fund. You need to start savings. Uh, Paying yourself first is important. And your old self or your older self is going to appreciate everything you set aside today, and it grows. Uh, Nothing wrong with it. Before you do your other bills, before you give money to family, before you, take that vacation, do whatever, put some money aside. And once you do that, also you want to add some as we've shown with human nature. Add some friction, add some uh, artificial walls between you and getting that money out easily. One of the things I like to have people do is set money aside in a high yield savings account. These are savings accounts that are offered through various financial institutions that'll pay you well above the rates you're going to get at the traditional big banks. Think of the big five banks like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank, all of those. The interest rates on those accounts tend to be really low in comparison to what you could get for some other avenues. So set money up in a high yield savings account. Also make that high yield savings account at a different financial institution from where you do your regular banking. So say you have a bank account, your checking account at Bank of America. Set up a high yield savings account with somebody different than Bank of America. Uh, Also, don't get an ATM card for that account and don't tie it to any existing ATM card. And that's part of the reason I recommend setting it up at a bank that's different from where you do your checking, because you don't want that easy access to that. And then automate a transfer. Set up an automatic withdrawal, either from your paycheck or from your checking account, and get that money out of there. Right, every time you're paid, have it shipped off, put away in a separate account. Make that bank not easy to access. You don't want to make it impossible to access though, because you still may need it for an emergency. The goal of the emergency fund is to have it there 3 to 6 months set aside so you can use it for things going wrong, cars breaking down. I just had to, from my example, I had to go for a root canal a few days ago. Even with dental insurance, it was almost $1,000. If I didn't have the money, then, you go in needing to put it on a credit card. You'll end up paying for that credit card for a long stretch, more than $1,000 was. So, uh, having the money there available to use for emergencies is what it's there for. So set that money aside. Don't have it to access on a whim. You're going out to a club or drinking or going out with friends. And you need more money. You don't want to hit that savings account. Leave it there, uh, and let it grow. Now I'm going to ask you to do 30 seconds. Oh, do a quick 60-second search all on your smartphones. Uh, Thinking about your high yield savings account. I want you to search high yield savings account with no fees. Uh, so do that. Take the next minute or so and look. Start looking for banks and look for banks that offer no maintenance fees, that offer no minimum bank balance requirements, banks that are FDIC or NCUA insured. So that way the money's protected by the government. And look and things to avoid withdrawal penalties. So some things like a CD, which is a certificate of deposit, which is a savings vehicle, but there's a penalty for taking the money out early. So look for the green flags. So take a minute. I'm going to ask you in a moment to share with me the banks and the rates that you found. As I told you, what banks and interest rates did you find when you did your search? Did anybody do the search? Ally. And what was the rate at Ally? Did you look? Someone else uses Marcus by Goldman, also a good one, 3.3. ARP, for those in retirement age. I don't know if you could open ARP before age 55, I believe. SoFi is 4%. That's right. I know there are some that are out there that'll pay 4%. A lot of them will be 3.5, 3.3. Either way, that's going to be a higher rate than traditionally what inflation is, which is usually about right now, 2.5 to 3% a year. So your savings will outpace inflation, which is an important thing to look for. Again, we're not really going into that here. But if you go and you look at the interest rates, and I'm not going to ask you to do this, but the interest rates at the big banks, they'll be less than 1% usually. So you get a drastic improvement by going to some of these banks. They're usually going to be online banks or credit unions. They're going to pay more than the traditional big banks. So the point being is you put that money aside, you're going to earn, say, 4% a year. And that number is important because I reference it later but that's putting the money, your money to work for you. And that 4% may not seem like a lot today, but add 30 years of time to it, 30 years of time to it, it'll grow exponentially. You'll start earning interest on your interest. So a reality check, dealing with cost of credit. Uh, it's easy to take out debt. Uh, as we all, well, know, you get debt, you pay it off, you build credit score, you start getting offers, you get more credit cards. You think that means it's okay to spend. Um, but the interest rate on that credit card, even if it may not seem like a lot on a month-to-month basis, eats away at you over time. Plus it paying off old debt for things that you bought that you really didn't need in the long term, uh, basically is you're renting out your future uh, for buy stuff in the past versus securing your freedom and choices down the road. I often, one of the items I like to do is compare what the cost of debt is to versus what that money does hidden away in a savings account. So if you have $10,000 of debt, normal credit card like a 19.99, 20% interest rate, making a $200 a month payment is the minimum payment to pay that off. It'll take you a little over 9 years to pay it off. And when you do it, it's going to end up costing you over $11,000 of interest. So the interest will be more than the original debt. So the money you spent on often is discretionary stuff of going out to eat, buying more clothes, more shoes, new Jordans, new iPad, whatever it is. It mounts up. That 10, whatever you pay for it now is going to cost you more than what that cost just in interest. Conversely, if you put that money into savings over that same 109-month period, you've put $21,800 into savings. At 4%, just at 109 months, that turns into 26,000, over $26,000. If you put it into something with a little bit more yield, like some savings and some stocks, it's $30,000. If you go straight stocks, and I use that 10% number because, for those of you that do investing or you follow the financial markets, the S&P 500 on average gains about 10% a year. There's some up years, there's some down years, but it gains about 10% a year. So if you put that money to use in a 10% account, it goes to almost $36,000. Plus then never touching it and never making another deposit of additional savings or investments 20 years down the road. So now this is 30 years from the day or as you're nearing retirement age. That's even at just a basic 4% savings account. The 21,000 you put aside today is worth almost over $57,000 at retirement age. At 7%, it's 118,000, and at 10%, it's $239,000, showing you the value of compounding. So the takeaway from all of this is the money that you put away paying for debt for stuff in the past that you didn't really need is costing you could cost you up to $200,000 when you're facing retirement. Not to sound like a broken record, but pay yourself the money instead of paying your debt. Once you've got then these goals in mind and your dream, revisit your dream. And we come up with goals that you have that you can make today to follow that dream. We recommend the SMART goal framework. And SMART, quickly in a synopsis, is you make specific goals that are measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. For specific, you want to make a specific goal, meaning I want to have $100,000 towards buying a house, not just I want to buy a house. That doesn't say that's not specific enough. Come up with a specific goal. I want to buy a house and have $100,000. Measurable. Track how to measure that over time. Have something to measure against. Just say, if I want to buy a house, you can't keep track of where you're at in the process. But if you say, I want to have $100,000 for buying a house, you can measure your progress in making that goal a reality. Make your goals achievable. I mean, they have to be grounded in reality. You can't just say, my SMART goals is I want to become a professional athlete. Well, likely that's not a realistic goal, but the realistic goal is buying a house. So make what you want to do an achievable goal. Not just I want to be rich or I want to be a billionaire. Those aren't realistic, goals by itself. Relevant, whatever your goal is, has to pertain to your dream. Bring the professional athlete goal. It doesn't follow what your dream is going to be. The one we talked about earlier. So make the goal part of the plan to meet your dream. And then time bound. Set a specific date on it. Don't just say in the future I'm going to do this. Say every 5 years from now I want to buy the house, or a year from now I want to travel to a foreign country. Put a time on it. This way you can track it. And there's a little more psychology into all of this. We could do this through separate workshops and separate programs that we do. So I'm just touching on it. Then once you have your goal and your dream, set up an annual review. Today's April 9th. As you see, I set a calendar a year from now. So every year over the next 5 years, set a calendar reminder on your phone and ask yourself these things. Is the dream still your dream? It's okay if it changes. What you want today may not be what you want a year or two down the road. Today you could be thinking, I want to buy a new car. A year from now, you may be thinking, well, I think I want to put the money towards a house, or I want to travel, uh, go to Australia or whatever it is. It's okay if your dreams change. That's just life. What we want today is going to be different than what we want in the future. But putting the money aside now helps create you the freedom uh, to make those choices down the road versus not putting it aside. Down the road, you're not going to have your fund and available to you uh, to make those choices. Then look at how much has your freedom fund grow. Again, I've mentioned this money is all about buying your freedom and giving you choices. So how has that money grown over the last year? You can usually track it just by looking at your investment statements or your 401k statements or your IRA statements, whatever it is. How has your fund grown? How much more have you put towards meeting that goal? How much more has that money grown on its own? And then when you hit that period, also then do a reflection. What is your next micro smart goal? What can you do over the next year of this 5 year plan? What can you do over the next year to help further those goals? And just think about that. You know, every year, force yourself to come back to it. Seems a little hokey, a little corny, but treat it as a birthday of what you want, what your dreams are, for your future self. These are little gifts for you. And I probably spoke too fast because this is our closing. Um, Key points, seize your freedom. Putting money aside is going to give you freedom to make choices. The golden rule, the new golden rule, pay yourself first. Cannot strive that enough. Um, Next steps, I mentioned to you earlier about downloading the budgeting spreadsheet. Go ahead and do that. There's an email that we're going to give you down the road. So if you want the budgeting spreadsheet, email us, we could forward it to you. Then other things I'd like you to do today, open a high yield savings account. Somebody with a bank different than who you already bank with. If you don't have one already, I know some of you mentioned that you have it, so that's good. But also set up an automated transfer. Put a little money aside automatically every month. If you can't do 5% of your income, even if it's $10, $20, whatever it is, uh, anything today will get you start building those habits for down the road.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sean. Before we conclude today's session, I would like to thank you again and sharing your expertise with us. Prior to logging off, if all of you that could take a few moments to fill out our workshop feedback survey, we're going to go ahead and drop that in the chat. And thanks again for joining us.